The state pension for many of you may be your only or biggest source of retirement income and a key cornerstone on your path to retirement. In this video, we're going to explore what and how much the state pension is, as well as when it's payable. I'll also share an interesting anecdote as to how much the state pension would cost if you tried to buy this privately. The state pension, it's a form of guaranteed income payable from the government once you reach a certain age. There's no individual fund that you need to worry about or be concerned about the investment performance. The state pension age is payable from age 66 currently. However, this is set to rise to 67 from 2028. The state pension costs the government over £110 billion a year and accounts for 12% of the UK government's total spending. As the cost of it continues to rise and given the strain on public finances, it's very possible that the state pension is likely to see further changes in the future, be it the state pension age goalposts moving once again, it could be means tested, or how it's paid could be changed.
Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear.
On that cheery note, let's take a look at how much the state pension is. So the new full state pension, which is for anyone who retired after 2016, and what this video is going to focus on, is £221.20 a week. This equates to just over, we'll call it £11,500 a year. The state pension, so it doesn't just magically appear in your bank account. This is something you have to positively claim for. Assuming you are eligible for the state pension, it will increase by something called the triple lock. So this means the state pension will increase each year by the higher of either A, inflation, B, the average increase in earnings across the UK, or finally, just a flat rate of 2.5% a year. It does so to ensure that the state pension income and retirees' income from the state pension keeps up at least with inflation, and that the income isn't just eroded in real terms. This is why the state pension in April increased by over 8.5% year on year. Going back to the rising cost of the state pension, it's plausible that this is one aspect, the triple lock, that could be tinkered with, although it would prove to be very politically unpopular. Sounds good. How do I qualify for it then? So the state pension, and whether you're eligible for it, is based on your national insurance record. To get the minimum amount of state pension, you're going to need 10 qualifying years. For the full amount, you might be asking, you're going to need the 35 qualifying years of paying the necessary NI contributions. If you're somewhere in between 10 and 35, well, each year gives you 1/35 of the full state pension amount. For example, let's say you've got 30 qualifying years. This would give you a state pension of £9,859 per year. To meet the NI contribution threshold, it will depend on your employment status, so if you're employed versus self-employed. If you're employed, to get a qualifying year, you need to be earning more than £242 per week, and if you're self-employed, to get a qualifying year, your profit in that year has to be more than £6,725. However, if your income is below this criteria, or you aren't working, perhaps you're on maternity cover, raising a family, looking for work, or on benefits, then it's still possible to get credits. If this is you, the government website explores these different scenarios in more detail and what you can do to claim. You checked your state pension record and oh no, there's a shortfall in it. It doesn't like you have enough working years ahead of you either to make up the difference and claim those necessary NI contributions. What can you do? Is there any way you can get the full state pension? It's still possible to plug any gaps by making voluntary NI contributions and effectively purchasing additional qualifying years. It's generally possible to go back to plug any gaps from the previous 6 years. If you were employed, you can do this by making voluntary class 3 contributions, and if you are self-employed, you can make voluntary class 2 contributions. You can see the cost of making the relevant voluntary contribution on the screen now. Whether it's good value, it's going to depend on how long you live for. Generally speaking, and you can see in the example on the screen that's provided, generally it's of very good value. However, if you died the next year, you wouldn't be saying the same thing. We'll often hear from retirees that they mistakenly think that the state pension's tax-free. Whilst this is true in some instances, it isn't across the board. Let's take John. So he's got his full state pension, and let's say he is in receipt of a NHS pension, which comes to £4,000 a year. As his combined income is over £12,570, he's going to pay tax of 20% on the balance of that amount. This is because for most people, the personal allowance is £12,570, and this is the rate at which the effective tax rate is 0%. Any income above this threshold is subject to income tax. Okay, so let's use a different example. So Kelly, she retired at 66, no other form of retirement income, only the state pension. As this state pension amount, full state pension, is below the personal allowance, it's correct in her example to say her state pensions are tax-free. Interestingly, the state pension only has to increase by 9% from its current level to be above the personal allowance, which was announced that it was frozen until 2027 at the earliest. So what does this mean? This means potentially loads of retirees in the next coming years will fall under this umbrella and become taxpayers, assuming the state pension rises above it. That's why this is often referred to as a stealth tax. Prior to 2016, it was possible for either you or your employer to contract out of the additional state pension. Long story short, but unlike the new state pension, which is just a flat single rate, the old state pension had two components, a basic amount and also an additional state pension. So if you had contracted out of the additional state pension prior to 2016, then either your NI contributions were just lower or they may have been redirected to another pension, be it a workplace pension or private pension. So if you're contracted out, then it's possible an amount could be deducted from the new state pension, even if you've got the full 35 years. Now, it's possible if you do have a reduced state pension, that you can make voluntary contributions to top up this amount. So as we said, you've got to claim the state pension. It's not automatically paid into your account. It's possible, knowingly or unknowingly, to defer or delay taking your state pension. If you do so, then it increases by 1% for every 9 weeks you defer, which works at around 5.8%, we'll call it, for each year, full year that the state pension is deferred. Put another way, say Jeff doesn't take his state pension for a full year as he sold his business, was living a life of luxury and forgot to claim it. By deferring for a full year, he could be entitled to an extra £660 per year. As we know, the state pension's payable from the government. There's not exactly a fund that you need to worry about. But out of interest, what equivalent pension fund, private pension, would you need to purchase the state pension? So as we know, state pension, guaranteed for life, it typically dies with you in the vast majority of cases, and it increases by the triple lock. To try and estimate this, what private funds needed, we're going to see what would be needed to purchase an annuity for a similar amount. An annuity is similar in many respects in that it's paid for life, pays you until you die, it's guaranteed, and there's no investment fund. So to purchase a guaranteed income of £11,500, you're going to need a fund value, a private fund value to buy the annuity worth around 220k, which is quite frightening, and it does show you how the cost of the state pension is quite significant and why you could see potential governments change this in the future. I've assumed this is for a male age 66 who's in good health. Annuity income, as we've said, is for the full state pension amount, and I've set it so it rises by 3% a year. Now, it's hard to have a comparable rise because if you remember the triple lock, we don't know what that's going to be, but I think 3% is a decent and realistic assumption. If you're concerned about the state pension not being enough to retire on, watch this video which looks at how much income you may be able to take from a £100,000 pension from either drawdown or an annuity.